Glad to do that, Rick, and we are pleased to start out our program today with Arthur Brooks, president of the American Enterprise Institute. He's also the Beth and Ravenel Curry Scholar in Free Enterprise there. He's the author of 10 books and hundreds of articles on topics including the role of government, fairness, economic opportunity, happiness, the morality of free enterprise, and his latest book, The Road to Freedom, How to Win the Fight for Free Enterprise. And I could go on, but Arthur, it's great to have you back with us today on the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Hey guys, how are you? I was going to say Merry Christmas, but it's not quite there yet, is it? Happy holidays, at least.
Close enough.
You know what? As far as retailers are concerned, they wish it would be. So but
yeah, they've actually had the decorations out since July in my neighborhood. So,
well, you know what? They try to push it up every year, but this year hasn't worked so far.
Yeah, that's true. Although, what the data say, which is pretty interesting, is that Black Friday was pretty lousy. Probably because so many people pushed purchases to Black Monday, Cyber Monday. You see that cyber sales are way up, and they're at least making up for what they think are the losses. So the brick and mortar stores are really taking the shorts, but it's exactly what anybody would have predicted as more of the economy moves online. So as an economic matter, if you're not worried about who gets what, I think that we're going to see that this season is going to be a little bit better than what people are saying.
Well, that would be a good thing, Arthur. If in fact it would. I mean, I saw two sets of numbers off of that. One forecast down 2%, one forecast up 2%. Frankly, it's a huge difference. It's a lot of money, and it's like any kind of numbers we're getting out of the government. We wait a month and then they revise it again, anyways. So I don't know. What we'll see.
Yeah,
but anyhow, I want to get to an article that you wrote, Arthur. And pretty interesting. We just come through Thanksgiving, heading into Christmas. We're talking about it, and it's a time to be thankful, time to give, and like all of these holidays, you've been saying, and you said in this recent article that there are some measurables actually that can be followed relative to giving. Your article entitled "They're Happier, Healthier, and Better Looking Too" caught my attention. It's an article about philanthropy and the benefits of giving to charities. But tell me a little bit behind the study that prompted the claims that you cited there in your article. Let's start with this one. What prompted somebody to actually take and do research on the benefits of giving in the first place?
Well, I've been doing that work for years and years and years. I wrote a book in 2006 called Who Really Cares? And in that book, I actually found that conservatives give more to charity than liberals do, even though they're poorer than liberals. And that really blew my mind. I didn't think I was going to find that, but I did. It really changed the course of my career, as a matter of fact, as a researcher. And I've been really interested in why people give ever since, and there are a whole host of reasons for it. But one of the nice things about charitable giving, despite the fact that people don't give because they want benefits, they don't want people to think that they're beautiful or wonderful. Generally, they're just more altruistic. People do look at you and they see you in a different way when you're giving. So I've got these studies from England that show that when people are observed as charitable givers, people perceive them as leaders. So if you want people to think of you as a leader, make sure that you're a giver. Now, actually, we learned, for instance, when we were kids in Sunday school, that servant leadership really matters. Well, this is actual empirical evidence that servant leadership is a real deal.
Well, I was thinking about that as well. I mean, the United States clearly is based on the underlying philosophy or principles, Judeo-Christian aspect of giving. I mean, that's really where a lot of it comes from. Christ himself said it's more blessed to give than to receive. So, so there's a principle behind it that I would say is eternally true. But did you find, or have you found in your research that the motivation for giving has that been measured too? In other words, some people could give because they hope to get something in return. Is there anything that you found in your research that would indicate that better to give with no intention to get it back?
Well, it's certainly a noble thing to do, but people have, in what we've been able to measure, people have a whole bunch of motivations for giving, and generally people give for a lot of reasons at the same time. Nobody gives because they're trying to get a tax write-off. You'd be an idiot to do that, because even if you're paying the highest tax rate, you're still spending 60 cents on the dollar, so you're still coming out behind. So nobody would actually give just to get the tax write-off, but the tax write-off has a role in people's decision to give or give more. There's kind of the warm glow that people give from feeling altruistic. There's the relationships that they build. And one of the interesting things that you find, and this is where it kind of gets into the metaphysics a little bit, if you look at the data on people who are givers, you will find that the more people give in subsequent years, the richer they get. This is where it really gets crazy. You find that people actually become more materially prosperous after they start to give, because they become more effective individuals. And so it's actually a really good investment philosophy, is to have a portfolio of charitable giving. This time of year, you should, think of the science. Think about how to improve yourself.
Well, that is the most interesting thing, and again, that's a principle that kind of flies in the face of the modern culture, which says you're better to hang on to what you have. But you'd actually say you can find that obviously you just can't go and dump your money on the street. So what you're talking about is giving with a purpose, giving with some kind of thought behind it that really makes a difference. I suppose somebody who gives is probably a little bit more careful about what they have. Is that part of it?
Sure. Well, it's people becoming intentional about their resources. And basically, here's what it comes down to. You really want to help somebody. You don't want to just give them something. You want to turn them into a problem solver. You want to empower them to solve problems for others. The best gift that you can give your kids is helping them to become givers to others, because you can't be a victim and a problem solver at the same time. Charitable giving and volunteering, it converts victims into problem solvers. It's the most extraordinary thing I've ever seen. If we want to stop being a nation of whining victims, which a lot of people think that we are, then we should all be more involved in our communities and all be in the business of helping others. We should have a greater philosophical expectations that people should be helping others. We should never have a welfare reform program ever again in our country that doesn't involve people who are getting off of welfare serving other people who are poor. This is the single best way that we could improve our culture.
That's a remarkable thing. That would really be a turnaround on the philosophy of government today that really has at its heart taking somebody else's money and giving it away. And I would have to say that the research you're talking about are individuals giving away their own money, not people or government giving away something that belongs to somebody else. Am I correct?
Oh, you're absolutely right. And there have been scientific studies that show that when people are giving away their own money voluntarily, they stimulate the same part of the brain that's associated with pleasurable activities, of being with somebody that you love, of doing something that's highly, highly pleasurable. But when you actually force people to give their money away, all that part of the brain shuts off. So you don't get any benefit, any pleasure, any good sensation from having your money taken from you, even if you believe that you need to pay your taxes. I mean, you and I, we pay our taxes, and we think we need to pay our taxes. But we don't get pleasure from it. It doesn't benefit us because we're not the problem solvers.
Interesting. Now, you mentioned in the article that those who give are in fact actually happier. Now, that goes to part of what you're talking about right there, right?
Yeah,
because
they get happier too. It's not just that happier people give. It's that givers get happier. Extraordinary thing. You find before and after. For example, you'll take high school kids, and you'll take half of them and tell them to play puzzles with goof around, play games with each other, and the other half to tutor inner city kids on their math. And you do before and after measures of their mood, of which psychologists call their affect. And before and after, you see very, very clearly that the kids who are just doing their regular stuff, they don't have any change in affect. The kids who actually helped somebody else out for an hour have a dramatically higher mood.
Well, here again, I think you're part of it, I'm sure, is the fact that when your eyes are not on yourself but on somebody else, the serving component that you talked about, intricately probably connected with giving, and when others are the focus, then you have in fact turned the whole concept of getting, coveting, hoarding, all of those kind of things get turned on their head, which is a great place to live when you're with people who think that way.
Yeah,
for sure.
There's a real transcendental paradox here that people believe when they're feeling rotten that they need to kind of stew in their juices and figure it out. They need to do more things for themselves. I feel so terrible. I want to tell somebody my problems. I want to go buy stuff on the internet. I want to do things for me. People become more selfish when they're unhappy. That's exactly the wrong thing to do. Go volunteer to soup kitchen. Go cut your neighbor's lawn. You feel lousy? Guaranteed, money returned gladly. You'll feel better if you do that.
Yes, it will. And Arthur, we're going to have to go for a break or just a second. Stay with us if you can. Just on the other side, we'll be back.
Arthur, thanks for holding through the break.
Delighted.
I wanted to chime in. You and Sam, before the break, were talking about how giving makes you feel good and how doing things makes you feel good. And I have a personal story to relate to that. Once I was in a sales organization, and the manager, Steve, was a great guy, and Steve was always there to pump up everybody else. When somebody else was down, he was there to pump them up. And I said to him, Steve, who gets Steve up when Steve's down? And what Steve said kind of goes along with what you and Sam were talking about. Steve said, well, when I'm down, I look for someone else who needs help. And by helping them, that lifts my mood and it lifts my spirits up.
Right. That is exactly what you find. If you want to help others, or you want to help yourself, you help others. That's the paradox. That's the paradox that a lot of people don't understand, but some people have found it as the secret to enduring joy. There's very, very few truly happy people out there who are not serving others, who are not grateful for what they've been given, and they're not giving back as a result of that. The unhappiest people you'll ever meet are the most selfish people you ever meet. So, and actually giving money is just one way to do it. Volunteering, giving of yourself. And this is one thing that people who are really religious often forget. You go back and read the Bible, it talks about the importance of tithing, as everybody knows. And, we look at this in a really restrictive way. Well, tithing is giving away 1/10 of your money, right? And then they get wrapped around the axle. Is it before or after taxes? Who cares? It's 1/10 not of your money. It's 1/10 of your treasure. 1/10 of what you really value. In America today, which is an unbelievably rich country, what would you rather have? Would you rather be born smart or born rich? Would you rather be born talented or be born with a rich dad? And the answer, of course, is you'd rather be born with the resources. If those are your treasure, how are you tithing that? How are you tithing your morals? How are you tithing your values? How are you tithing your interest and affection and expertise? And if you make your life a witness, a giving witness, you're going to be happier than you've ever been.
Arthur, is charitable giving up or down?
Charitable giving is down still from the recession. Charitable giving of money is about $215 billion a year from individuals, and all together with corporations and foundations and bequests and all, that's about $300 billion a year, which is a ton of money. It's more than the entire GDP of rich countries like Denmark and Israel. I mean, we give away way more in dollars and also in dollars per capita than any other country in the world, and it's coming back. In a couple of years, it'll be back to where it was in 2007, and it'll go beyond that. So the United States has a lot to be grateful for, and it's a generous country, and we can do even more.
And Art, this is Sam back again here. Rick, thanks for throwing that personal illustration in on that. And Art, you brought up a good point there. We're not talking when it comes to giving and the benefits from it, and you just went through it. It's not just giving money, which some people may not have a lot of, but it's giving those things that you have. So for some it may be time, right? It may be the ability to go over and help somebody, paint their house or something of that type, right? I mean, you're broadening it to say giving is not just limited to finances, obviously.
Yeah, it's giving not even just giving what you have. It's giving what you value. That's the key. Is there something that you value? If you do, give it away. And then it will multiply, and then it will bless you, and it will be a blessing to others at the same time. And, that's what creates a better world, is when we act that way.
Well, it certainly does. One of the other points you said, it's healthy. It's people are happier, they are healthier, and they actually. What did you say? They're better looking.
They're richer.
How does that work?
Yeah, well, it's great. It's great. I mean, the better looking part is actually kind of funny. There were these, the University of Liverpool, a couple of economists were doing these studies, and what they would do is they would have an experiment where you have a bunch of guys who are in the experiment, and you tell them to show up to the experiment bringing their female other, better half. You know, some of them would be basically on first dates, and some of them were married. You know, there's all sorts of different configurations of relationships. And then what they did in the experiment is they asked these guys to walk down the street from one location to another, and they had this confederate. They had this guy who was part of the experiment who was acting like a homeless person who would come up, out of an alleyway and ask the guy for money. Right now, what have they found? What did they find? They found that guys who were on their first dates just dug deep and gave the guy a bunch of change. The guys who were ensconced in a relationship permanently, like married, they gave them nothing. They find that when you're trying to impress girls, you give a lot more. You look like a really generous person. And when women actually see videos of men giving more, they find them more physically attractive.
Well, you know what? That's a real lesson, isn't it? I mean,
you bet, man.
You know, when I think of things like that, I think of, well, that there are guys, the gruff-looking, scowling look of old Scrooge. Actually, there's something to that, isn't there? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, women are not attracted to that.
Well, that makes sense. I think, well, if they're going to be stingy to the Salvation Army, they're certainly not going to come up with the goodies on Valentine's Day and birthdays and Christmas and whatever. Makes sense.
Yeah, it probably does make sense, but also, you know, people are attracted romantically to good people, people who are nice, the people who are kind. That's who you want to be around. People are repelled by selfish people, which is the most extraordinary thing. You know, we all know really selfish people in our lives, and there are times in our worst moments when we're selfish people, and for some reason we don't recognize that. We don't remember that. It's an amazing thing, isn't it?
Yeah. It is indeed. You know, you talked about at the beginning that people don't give because they get a tax exemption or a reduction of some type. That's not the primary thing. If that's there, that's good, but that's not the primary thing about it. But do you see the current policies emanating out of the federal government, in somehow affecting the giving attitude here in this country?
Sure. I mean, the two main reasons, the two things that strangle charitable giving more effectively than anything else is a growing government where the government picks up more responsibilities in our social service or our welfare state, number one, statism. Number two is secularism, where you have a society that's secularizing and a society where the government is growing and the welfare state's getting bigger. You're going to see less charitable giving. I mean, look at Europe. People give next to nothing, and they don't feel like they need to give anything. And incidentally, particularly in Southern Europe, they're less happy. They're getting less happy by the year. The Spaniards and the Italians have been falling in their level of happiness for 25 years. I mean, this is not rocket science. You know how this stuff works.
And in part, what you're saying, if government takes too much, that people actually don't have the financial means to give it away, they deprive them of far more than just their money. They deprive them of happiness, which is sounds a little bit like the beginning of the Declaration of Independence, right?
Yeah, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness is serving others, defining happiness as you see fit, treating your life as an enterprise, and earning your success, which, of course, is kind of what you guys are all about, right?
Well, it is indeed, and Arthur, we're glad you can take and bring some of this current research to the benefit of our listeners here today. We'd like you to be able to give our listeners where they should go to find out more about what you're writing and what you're saying here. Could you?
Absolutely. So I'm the president of the American Enterprise Institute. That's www.aei.org. Or you can follow me if you want at Arthur Brooks on Twitter.
Hey, Arthur, let me make a statement and have you respond to it. Is it no wonder that America is the most generous nation on the face of the earth? How would you respond to that?
It's absolutely right. It's right. It's unambiguous. Anybody who denies that is not paying attention to the evidence, and they just don't want it to be true. I mean, a lot of people will say that because they look at the level of U.S. government foreign aid. They'll say, wow, you guys could be given a lot more as a percentage of your GDP. We give away more dollars in foreign aid than any other government already, but as a percentage of your GDP. But you got to look at what people are doing privately. I mean, all the way down to when you look at immigrants in this country, what are immigrants doing? Generally speaking, they're remitting a lot of their salary back home. The main source of GDP in El Salvador and in Guatemala today are remittances from their relatives in the United States. I mean, people are just really generous in this country. I mean, a culture that even it magnetizes the generous people from around the world.
All right, Arthur Brooks, we want to thank you for joining us today here on the Conservative Commandos radio show. And again, your op-ed is in the Wall Street Journal.
That's right. Thanks, guys. God bless.
Merry Christmas.
You too.